Let's talk about something we all want to do better, learning. We're going to break down the science of how you can study more effectively and make sure that what you learn actually sticks.
So what's the real secret here? Is it about studying longer, grinding harder, or is there a smarter way to do it? We're about to uncover 3 incredibly powerful, brain-friendly techniques, and it all starts with a pretty high-stakes medical experiment.
So imagine this, you're a surgical resident, and you're learning a skill that could literally be the difference between life and death for your patient. Well, that was the exact scenario for a group of residents in a fascinating study back in 2006.
Okay, so the researchers took these residents, who were all learning how to suture arteries, and split them into 2 groups. Now get this, both groups got the exact same study materials. They spent the exact same total amount of time studying. The only difference? Group B made one tiny little change to how they studied.
A month goes by, they bring everyone back in, and the results were just dramatic. One group was way better at performing the surgery. So to understand their secret, we first need to take a quick peek under the hood at how our brains actually learn.
Right? So to really get why some study methods are gold and others are, well, not, we have to understand how our brain takes a brand new idea and makes it permanent.
It all kicks off in a part of your brain called the hippocampus. When you first learn something new, the memory gets encoded here. Think of it like writing something down with temporary ink. It's there, but it's not permanent yet.
So after that first encoding, every time you study that concept again, you're reactivating the same neurons, making that connection stronger. Over time, that knowledge gets moved to the neocortex. That's the long-term storage unit. But this last step, integration, is absolutely crucial. And it happens mostly when you're asleep. Your brain is hard at work connecting this new information to everything you already know. So no, sleep is not downtime. It's essential work time for your brain.
So, knowing that, how can we help this whole process along? Well, our first technique is all about shifting gears from just passively receiving information to actively participating in your own learning.
You know, a lot of us fall into the trap of just rereading our notes or highlighting a textbook. It feels easy, it feels productive, but it often creates what scientists call an illusion of competence, because the answer's right there in front of you. Active recall, on the other hand, like testing yourself with flashcards, forces your brain to pull that information out of storage. That active retrieving is the workout that really strengthens the memory. It shows you what you actually know.
And here's a wild thought. Don't be afraid to get it wrong. Making mistakes isn't a failure. It's actually a feature of great learning. When you struggle to remember something and then see the right answer, your brain is actually primed to lock that information in much more securely. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, moving on to tip number 2, it's time to mix things up. Once you're actively testing yourself, the next level is to change what you're studying within a single session.
This is a technique called interleaving. So, instead of studying all your math, then all your history, you switch between them. Why does this work? Well, it forces your brain to constantly change gears. You have to forget for a second, then retrieve again, which strengthens those memory paths even more. It also helps you start to see the connections and the differences between different topics.
We've covered the how and the what. Our third and final technique is all about the when. It's about giving your brain that essential downtime it needs to do its most important work.
And this brings us right back to that super important integration phase. Spacing out your study sessions over several days is just so powerful because it gives you time to rest and sleep in between. And remember, during that offline time, your brain is actively filing away that new knowledge and connecting it to the big picture. This is the classic battle, right? Cramming versus spaced repetition. Cramming might feel like it works. The info feels really fresh for that test tomorrow. But that knowledge is almost always temporary because it never had time to get integrated. Spaced repetition is how you make information actually stick for good.
Which brings us all the way back to our surgical residents. Now that we have the clues, active recall, interleaving, and spaced repetition, it's time to finally solve the puzzle.
So let's ask it one last time. Same materials, same total study time. What was the one change that made such a massive difference?
And here it is. The first group crammed all of their training into one long single day, but the successful group, they took the exact same amount of training time and simply spread it out over 4 weeks. They used spaced repetition.
And look at the results a month later. The performance gap wasn't small, it was massive. The group that spaced out their learning retained the skills so much more effectively. That knowledge had time to get stored, integrated, and become a permanent part of their skill set.
And that's really the big takeaway here. Active recall, Interleaving and space repetition, these aren't just clever tricks. They work because they're designed with the brain in mind. They go with the grain of how we are naturally built to learn.
So the real question is, for you, now that you know how the brain really learns, what new skill, what new idea are you going to tackle more effectively today?